everybody. I'll bring this regular council meeting to order Monday, April the 19th at 7 p.m. and to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Stahelis. And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we have number 2, introduction of late items. Do you have any late items?
I have no late items, no. Next order, please.
Thank you. We'll move to approval of the agenda then, please.
Do we have moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Vidal? Call the question. All in favor? Everybody in favor? Thank you. And next order, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we have the adoption of council minutes. We have the regular council meeting minutes of April 6, 2021 here for adoption.
And do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Are there any errors or omissions?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to draw council's attention to page 4 at the top of the page, and the motion should read, seconded by Councillor Piper. Thank you. As amended, then, Your Worship.
And the approval of the agenda as approval of the minutes as amended, and call the question. All in favor? Thank you. And next order, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we have the record of the public hearing of April 6, 2021 here for adoption.
And we have adoption. Move and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Vidal, seconded by Councillor Hooper. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favor? Everybody in favor? Thank you. Next order, please.
Yes, thank you. And next we have the committee of the whole meeting minutes of April 9, 2021, also here for adoption.
The committee of the whole here for adoption, moved by Councillor Palmer, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any errors or omissions? Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Nobody opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 5. Is there any business arising from the minutes?
Any business from councillors arising from the minutes? None being, we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll skip right through the consent agenda as there are no items on that this evening. And we'll go on to number 7, delegations and petitions. This evening we have Sergeant Mike Sargent of the RCMP Detachment in Agassiz regarding the 2020 Village of Harrison Hot Springs Police Report.
Good evening, Sergeant. You're on.
Good evening, Your Worship, and thank you, Mayor Fazio and Village of Harrison council members and Village of Harrison staff for giving me the opportunity tonight to give you a quick presentation on the 2020 year in review. Obviously, it was a year unlike any other in my policing background with COVID and everything. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to attempt to share my screen presentation here. All right. Can everybody see that on your end?
Yep.
Okay. So like I said, I'll try and keep this quick. There's a few pages. I want to leave quite a bit of time for some questions at the end. So the 2020 Village of Harrison Hot Springs Police Report. Currently in Agassiz this past year, we remained current with our 14 total members, 6 on the municipal side, 8 on the provincial side. We had 4 new members transition in during 2020, plus another member joined us this year. We've seen at least 5 of our 14 members now reside in the Kent-Harrison area, which to me is important because it gives that sense of community pride and that overall wanting to do what's best for the community. No changes to our policing area, but I frequently tell people that we are unique, probably more than anywhere else in the province, in that we have 2 municipalities with 2 mayors and councils. We have a ski hill. We have a big tourist destination being Village of Harrison Hot Springs. We have 5 Indigenous communities and 3 correctional facilities. So pretty tough to find that anywhere else. We do offer 24-hour, 7-day-a-week policing. There's always members working here at the detachment. The impact of COVID-19, as I mentioned before, kind of the year unlike any other. This caused significant decrease in community event participation across our communities, reduction in detachment services, increased costs for PPE and overtime when members have symptoms and have to go off to self-isolate. There was a temporary hold on crime prevention initiatives. Obviously, some noted effects on the court systems where the judges and justices were reluctant to hold people longer in jail because of possible exposures within the correctional facilities. We did see COVID-19 related calls for service and public health orders. However, District of Kent, Harrison Hot Springs, for the most part, most people were very well behaved and we didn't have to give out too much in the way of tickets or anything along those lines. And of course, specific to Harrison, kind of tourism season came in like a lamb, not a whole lot. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of June into July, it kind of exploded and we saw crowds like we probably haven't seen before. So highs and lows for sure. I'm just going to go quickly through the general stats. This page of stats here is more for our whole detachment, and then I'll get into Harrison specific shortly. So with partially based on COVID, our calls for service were down about 7%. Not a huge drop from last year, but a drop nonetheless, which is surprising given that we've seen increases in the last 5 years. Our priority 1 calls went up. Basically, those are your 911 emergencies, anything that requires an emergency response. That's about it for that. As in past years, the municipal versus provincial breakdown as far as calls for service remains on par. Municipal is 44%, provincial is 56%. Now specific to Harrison. So 2019 total calls for service were 567. Last year we dropped a bit down to 540. Again, not a huge change. Where we did see the big change was 2019 property crime files, 114, which made up about 19% of all Harrison files. We dropped down to 70. So that's a pretty good increase or decrease, sorry. So 39% decrease in property crime files. Part of it is related to COVID. Part of it is related to more awareness in the community through crime prevention and crime reduction initiatives. And a big part of it is the work done by my team here. The increased patrols, the increased members we had during some of the summer season, just to make it visible that we're out there and reduce crime. Again, the property crime numbers down quite a bit. The only one that increased, and again, slightly from 2 to 4, was break and enters to residences. Everything else was down across the board, which is, of course, as the police, we like to see. Again, typical areas hit in Harrison. The businesses, parked vehicles in some of the hotels, motel areas, and ongoing issues with the underground parking lots in some of the condominium units. Being that it is a resort area, there's lots of tourists, lots of parked vehicles, and of course crime goes associated with that. Crime trends, overall number of calls for service did decrease in Harrison, as they did across our policing area, whether it was Popcom, whether it was District of Kent, even the Indigenous communities, our numbers were down. Property crime numbers decreased, still seeing spikes in activity, and Part of that is because of where Harrison is located. It is, I wouldn't say it's isolated, but if you're going to come here, you're not going to break into one vehicle, you're not going to break into one business, you're not going to break into one house. You're going to make the most of your time while you're here. We have seen a variety of offenders charged in the past year. A noticeable uptick in transient offenders. There's actually very few property crime prolific offenders in our area. A lot of them come to us from Mission, Maple Ridge, Chilliwack, and even further west. Traffic remains a big priority for our detachment. Still school zones as you come into town. Still lots of concern Lillooet Road with the big trucks. It is one of the priorities, and we do encourage the public to call in all concerns. The more we hear about an area, the more complaints we get about a specific area, the more it shows the need to implement enforcement measures. You'll see our number for enforcement down from almost a record high in 2019. A good chunk of that was due to COVID, where for a while there, the direction was not to get too proactive when it came to enforcement. A lot more of the action we took was parking a car in some of these hotspot areas just as a deterrent, or even just flashing the lights as somebody speeding is approaching. So just to limit that face-to-face contact while COVID was at its height. Some of you have probably seen Mr. Constable Scarecrow around town these days. That was an initiative started by one of our members who is also a Harrison resident. So you'll see these around Agassiz and Harrison, and so far the feedback has been very good. I've been driving along and I've seen the effect it has on drivers. Obviously, over time, the people that frequent this area will get used to it, but that's where we add on additional enforcement, and then the real thing just down the road. So you've had your warning, and if you keep speeding, you're probably going to get a ticket. Initiatives. So we have the Speed Watch. We trained 5 new Harrison volunteers last fall. Again, with COVID, it kind of put things on hold for a bit, but we have a new policy and procedure to limit any potential issues with that. So we're hopefully going to get that up and running shortly. We were successful with a civil forfeiture grant for a new handheld laser radar system. And we have a current civil forfeiture grant in for a Black Cat traffic monitoring system. And basically what that is a box we put on a post or a telephone pole in a area that we do get complaints in. And it'll give us all the data we want as far as number of vehicles that go through, speed ranges. So it'll identify if there is a speeding problem, at what time of day there's a speeding problem, so we can even further target our traffic enforcement. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to be successful with that for this year. Violent crime, not overly a big issue. And again, these are numbers for all of our policing area. So it does include the correctional facilities, which form a good chunk of this and why it's up so high. We have probably on average 2 to 3 incidents reported a week at the correctional facilities. So they do add to our totals. It's not that we're living in an unsafe area. It's actually quite the opposite. These numbers are quite low for our population and what we're seeing. Same goes for domestic violence. There have been reports from other municipalities that because of COVID and the stressors associated with it, that domestic violence was up in a lot of places. It basically remained about the same here. So again, not a big issue. Some of the highlights from the Harrison area. Back in February of 2020, a member on routine patrol in the area of the RV park along Hot Springs Road came across a suspicious vehicle. It was later determined that the occupants were found to have broken into the clubhouse, stole a TV and a bunch of other stuff, and were promptly arrested and sent to court. During the summer, from May to July, we implemented a very brief seasonal policing with a focus on Harrison area. So every long weekend, we brought in additional members just to see what the impact was. Throughout the course of the summer, it was very positive. We had very few calls on the weekends that the members were out. So as a result, last fall, we approached your worship and council with a proposal for seasonal policing. And you'll see us out there every weekend throughout the summer. Just try to keep a lid on things, be visible, and keep everyone safe. Last November, we responded to a domestic assault at a local motel. Arrest was made, found to have a handgun on this individual as well as drugs, and the male was known to be a prolific offender from another jurisdiction. So we saw to it that he was sent out to court, and he remains actually still in custody to this date. So overall, what are we doing as a detachment? Again, I mentioned increased patrols, presence, foot patrols, visibility. No doubt you've seen myself or the rest of my team out there walking around Harrison. Educating the community through crime prevention. I actually did, I met with a couple of residents on Friday about making some of their buildings, condominiums, more secure. So that was very positive. Targeted and proactive traffic enforcement, ensuring current resource levels are maintained, working with our partners. So part of our seasonal philosophy is to include and incorporate bylaw into our patrols, kind of work more as a team. And obviously we do a lot with Kent Harrison Search and Rescue as well. We're working a lot with the Indigenous communities on proactive initiatives for crime reduction in their areas and communities. We're successful within the last few months of getting approval for our situational table for this area. So I just wanted to thank the council members that participated in that and showing the support, as well as Mayor Fascio, to get that up and running off the ground. That's going to be a huge benefit to us moving forward in assisting high-risk individuals within our community. And as I already mentioned, the area-focused seasonal policing. The last few months, we've seen well above average participation on some of the crime prevention initiatives, namely the Block Watch. We just officially recognized 8 new Block Watch areas within the village of Harrison. Those Block Watch signs should be going up any day now if they're not up already. And basically what it does is it allows for partnerships between the police and the community, increased communication both ways, in that we can provide information on if we notice that there's issues in the community, and vice versa. We get that information back on suspicious persons, anything that seems out of the ordinary. And it also encourages involvement and pride in one's community. New programs, Speed Watch. Again, we have the 5 new volunteers. We have 5 more ready to be trained. And it seems as though there's a huge appetite to reestablish the Citizens on Patrol, or formerly the Paw Patrol. So lots coming to the area in this upcoming year. And the last slide I wanted to put in here, just to highlight kind of the unsung heroes of our detachment, which is our police-based victim services. They play a big part in what we do, in that we may go to the call, we may do the investigation, but there's a lot of post follow-up as far as preparing somebody for court, just following up with them if somebody's on conditions, court-imposed conditions, questions about the file, or even just there for moral and mental support, which is huge, especially for victims of violent crimes. So you'll see that our 1.5 volunteers, they took on 202 files last year, which is up tremendously from the past couple of years, and actually still have currently 117 files, which keeps them busy. So I just wanted to make sure that they got some recognition and highlight the efforts that they put forth on a regular basis.
Thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions from the councillors for our Sergeant? Councillor Vital, then Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Sergeant. It's certainly encouraging to me to see that we're being pretty good with proactive and stability from our previous year. One thing that occurred to me during your presentation is the Victim Services program. I did have the opportunity years ago to volunteer and participate in the Surrey RCMP Victim Services, and it is a wonderful program. And being that it is national volunteer work, I'm really glad to see that your acknowledgement to those individuals was included in your report. The one thing that I would like to know is now that our tourism season is coming up, and you alluded to working in cooperation with our bylaws officers, and I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on exactly what that entails. I know there is kind of that distinction between what bylaws are responsible for and what RCMP are responsible for. So could you comment on that and elaborate just a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So basically, our goal is to basically form that working partnership with the bylaw people, whether that's us joining up with them to do patrols, because there's always strength in numbers. The more of a group that people see, the more not so much intimidating it is, but it's noticeable, right? A big part of that also is just information sharing. They are going to hear and see things throughout their day and report it to us, and vice versa. We can say, be on the lookout for this as well. So it's that partnership, and we did see glimpses of it last year, like I said, when we had the members on during the long weekend. So a lot of good stuff can come out of that for sure.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Sergeant.
Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the Sergeant. Thank you for your transparency this evening. Seeing those numbers really helps to drive home. There is some constituents that have reported that our crime rates are extremely high. So I'm not a fan of fear mongering. So I appreciate receiving the facts from the actual authority in charge of that. So a heartfelt thank you to you and your members and your staff and volunteers who serve our community. Thank you very much. I do just have a couple questions. I'm wondering if the detachment partners with ICBC to address auto crime in the community at all?
So we do, in that we do have our local representative that just switched over. Mike Waitman used to be the guy. Now we have Tanis Hatch, who's new in her role, but taking that on. So a big part of that is through community education, kind of the do's and don'ts with your vehicles, as luck would have it, with Adam Lewis coming back to the Observer, we had talked about before about doing a monthly piece in the paper just to get those community messages out there for awareness. So
Awesome. That'll be great. Thank you. Also about traffic enforcement. So in our school zone and Lillooet, because those are provincial highways, I assume that those stats that you shared are just for the EGC detachment, or does that share with Fraser Valley Traffic Services as well, or those numbers would be added to your guys' good work?
Yeah, so those numbers are specific to the Agassiz members. So obviously there will be probably a huge increase in the numbers provided by the Fraser Valley traffic section in that area, because I know they are and about, and I did actually speak with a couple of their members in Harrison the other day, and looking to form more of a kind of joint venture as far as enforcement, especially around the boat launch during the summer. So
that's great. Good work, you guys. Thank you. That was my other question. And then I'm wondering, with your Black Cat, I'm very familiar with that device. Will you use that in partnership with the deployment of Constable Scarecrow, as well as perhaps putting it up in neighborhoods where speeding complaints come forward?
Absolutely, because part of the Constable Scarecrow, in conjunction with the Black Cat, it allows us to actually see the effects of Constable Scarecrow and measure, the success or whatever from that. So it captures all the driving behavior, so it should reflect that.
That's great. And I'll just close off. Will you be? Is it anticipated that you'll be providing us quarterly reports as we go through the year, or?
I can certainly do that for sure. Would you prefer it specific to Harrison, or is just the general one, would that suffice?
Yeah, it's kind of, for me, I won't speak on behalf of council, but it's interesting to hear the difference between the areas for sure. And I really appreciate the official word coming out of the detachment to quell any rumors that may run amok. Thank you very much again for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from Council? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Sergeant. The quarterly report would be very helpful, and of course, it also is very helpful to know the statistics. I think the general statistics are quite helpful, as Councillor Piper indicated. Also, though, the ones for Harrison, I find very significant as well, or interesting. I'm very pleased we're going to have greater police presence in the village and on the beach this summer. One of my concerns has always been the use of alcohol on the beach, and I think that's gone up drastically during COVID when people can't go into bars and restaurants. More younger people are drinking on the beach, and that concerns me. And again, anecdotally, you see the bottles, empty bottles, you know what's happening. And I think that's leads itself to driving issues, violence, all sorts of things that just aren't suitable for our beach. So I'm looking forward to that. And I take it that what we normally would expect for our CMP coverage, plus the additional coverage that we've got, that we should see significantly greater coverage and presence this summer on the beach that can deal with issues like alcohol. I would take it, correct?
That's correct. Our plan this year, in the past, we've given up a member to supplement the kind of Upper Fraser Valley Regional District seasonal policing team. This year, we're retaining that member. So basically from Thursday to Sunday, there'll be a dedicated seasonal policing member on. And then of course, the Saturday, Sunday, dedicated specifically to Harrison. And then of course, probably quite a few patrols the Thursday, Friday, and bolster it up for long weekend Our goal this year, starting May long weekend, however that's going to look with COVID and provincial health orders, is to hit the ground running and be out there in numbers and send the message early, and hopefully that gets through.
Yes, and I appreciate that. I think I'm looking forward to it being very successful this year. Thank you.
Now the questions. Well, that being said, Sergeant, really appreciate your comprehensive report and taking the time to come out and present this to us. It's very helpful, not just for the council, but like Councillor Piper mentioned, for the citizens in the community as well, to really see the actual facts that crime is not overflowing into the lake type of setup, using that sort of expression. But really appreciate you and your detachment for the great work that you do for our communities. It is very much appreciated, and I'll be seeing you soon, and take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council.
Thank you.
And the next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to number 8, correspondence, and we have a letter dated March 31st, 2021 from the City of Victoria regarding they're seeking support for laid off tourism and hospitality workers. And the other item, which should read B, letter dated April 13, 2021 from the City of Penticton regarding BC government's use of provincial paramountcy to undermine local government bylaws. Here for receipt, Your Worship.
Do we have a move and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Piper, second by Councillor Vidal. Call the question. All in favour? Opposed? Anybody? No. Thank you. Next order of business.
Yes, Your Worship. The next item is number 9. Is there any business arising from the minutes? For correspondence, I'm sorry.
Any business from council arising from the correspondence? Councillor Palmer.
I would move that we do a letter in support of the City of Victoria's letter that we similarly write a letter to the provincial government supporting the points made in their letter.
So that's both letters.
I'm sorry? No, I'm referring to the City of Victoria letter.
Just Victoria. Okay. So it's moved by Councillor Palmer. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Piper. Any discussion on that? Call the question. All in favour of the letter of support? Everybody in favour? Thank you. And any other letters coming up from council? No. We shall move on. Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, we'll move on to number 10, reports of councillors, committees, committee of the whole, and commissions.
Councillor Hooper.
Yep. Good evening. On the 7th, 14th and 16th of April, I attended the usual CNIB workshops and webinars. On the 8th of April, I attended a meeting at the Foundry regarding the ongoing opioid crisis. On the 9th of April, I attended the Committee of the Whole. The 12th of April, I attended the BCCRN, that's the Citizens Response Network, regarding the up-and-coming end-of-life webinar for tomorrow on the aged. On the 13th of April, I attended the Agnes Harrison Historical Society meeting. And on the 15th of April, I had a telephone call from Fraser Health with Mark Kenyon regarding the Riverstone project they have going, about a name change and the drop-in centre that's going to be there. And he will send in the council further information on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Palmer.
Actually, my meeting for library and emergency are later this month, so no report from my areas of responsibility.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Your Worship. On April 9th, I attended the Committee of the Whole meeting. And on April 13th, I attended the Harrison Agency Chamber of Commerce meeting. That's the end of my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Your Worship. On April 9th, I also attended a Council Committee of the Whole meeting. On April 12th, I attended a virtual discussion meeting with Minister Nathan Cullen with the Lower Mainland Local Government Association Executive. Minister Cullen was seeking input on the future use of Crown lands and the existing structure of the ministry. April 15th, my scheduled Agassiz Harrison Healthy Communities meeting was canceled. And I also do want to add that this week is recognized as National Volunteer Week. This year's theme is the value of one and the power of many. This week is a time to publicly recognize and acknowledge our volunteers who reach out and engage in kindness and caring, making our community stronger and more resilient. So I would like to send a huge thank out and with gratitude to everyone who gives up their time and volunteers for the betterment of our community. And that's the end of my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. And next order of business, please.
Yes, we'll move on to number 11, and that is reports from the mayor.
Thank you. Not too much, few bits and pieces here. The Lower Mainland District now has a new chief superintendent, the RCMP, Caleb Biani. That's G-H-A-L-I-B, B-H-A-Y-A-N-I. That's our new chief superintendent. At the detachment at, what's that place called, Councillor Piper? I'm sorry. Green Timbers, thank you. Thank you very much. The old brain goes now and again. Today, Councillor Vidal has already mentioned our wonderful volunteers in all our communities, and God bless them for all they do. Today, had a Zoom meeting with the community leadership meeting with the Chilliwack practice for division for doctors. We have a new Daphne McRae, the new executive director for the Chilliwack division, who took over from Katrina Beppel. She emceed the job, and basically it was just a COVID update, vaccination rollout, and a consistent messaging, which came through from one of the Petra Party with Fraser Health, says the obviously, as we've seen on the news, the acute numbers are rising, and across the region they're rising. Now, now when admissions come to the hospital, they are given the shots, and also those who are slated for their shots. There's a Chilliwack Mall, the hospital campus. Agassiz is on a Wednesday at the Ag Hall, and of course Hope as well. They're the 4 locations. The one thing that came out was how to try and educate the younger generation in our communities, and it's it's one of those situations, you know, that the young adults, and you know, we all look at things different ways. We can't put the blame totally on them, you know, as they go about their business. But there is things like having these parties on the beach, like we do not get in Harrison at the moment, and hopefully we won't be getting them in Harrison. But also the education part that we're trying to figure out, and I suggested that maybe I have found in the past that with education, the one place that it starts is at the schools, and from the schools it goes home. And whoever they have in their families may listen to the parents and take heed. on maybe just taking care of yourselves. You know, this is not putting the blame on anybody. It's just looking after yourself as an individual to protect all of us. Also, we had a follow-up with the shots for firefighters, and that was being followed up by our staff on that as well, so that they can get their shots in as soon as possible. So that was that meeting. On the April we had a regional meeting with the Minister Osborne and Dr. Lavoie, overview of the immunization plan and vaccine rollout. We are very grateful that Minister Osborne is having these ongoing meetings with all the municipalities. There were 36 that were on the call on this particular day, and she has to try and get this through in around 45 minutes. It normally takes an hour and 10 minutes, but everybody is on board with what the usual trend of questions that came out from the other municipalities is just concerns over the waiting for the vaccinations, with so many people who are keen to receive the vaccinations. And also there are places on Vancouver Island, the smaller places, who do have a challenge with trying to get these things in place with not having the staff that we have on the mainland. The other things that came about was retaining inclement weather. Of course, the other thing that we all know about is now which is going to carry on for 5 more weeks, is all eating establishments can only use their patios if they have them for the serving food. Those who do not have the patios can still carry on with the takeout service only. So that's unfortunate for our businesses, but that's the way it is till this trend starts to lower itself, and we get these shots into people's arms. We all have to be very careful, very responsible how we deal with our day-to-day movements in our communities. Like I've said before, and this is to our Harrison residents and those others who want to listen to me, that, you know, if you feel uncomfortable with big crowds, please go out in the mornings and in the late afternoons to enjoy the beach if you want to go that way. Or there's the other parts of the village which obviously don't get the crowds down towards McCombs and the sector lands. We are, although the orders are out there about restricting your travel, it's a very difficult situation for everybody, as was pointed out today on the news, that most especially resort municipalities are having a struggle trying to deal with the situation. And as we had the presentation by our RCMP, it's going to be a lot of bodies out there again this year, hopefully, to try and keep our place running well on the beaches and in our parks. I just hope that our citizens stay safe, get your shots when you're ready to go. And if you're a certain age where you can get the AstraZeneca, that's up to yourselves. Of course, you're not forced to have your shots. It's up to the individuals. Go to the pharmacies and get those shots. These meetings with our minister is very rewarding, and we get a lot of input that come out of those. In the what's this one? Oh, I've done that. The other thing I had here, again, for our seniors in our community, if you want more information on reaching certain services that are a benefit to you, in regards to, caregivers or disabilities, or somebody to do your shopping for you, or get you to the hospital or to the clinics, or even for your shots, please contact them. They do have resources to help you there. And that's a great group that we have to service both our communities in Agassiz and Harrison Hot Springs. And the last bit of news was from the Regional District meeting on the April the 8th at the Regional and Corporate Services Committee. Basically, there was one piece there that proposed restructuring of the Regional Indigenous Relations Committee, and the motion for consideration was that the Fraser Valley Regional District Board raise the profile of the Regional Indigenous Relations portfolio in keeping with the board's 2020-2022 strategic plan for reassigning the body of work currently falling under the mandate of the Regional Indigenous Committee to the Regional and Corporate Services Committee and Board of Directors, and that the terms of reference for the Regional Corporate Services Committee be amended to provide that the Regional Corporate Services Committee have oversight over all regional Indigenous relations and treaty relation matters at the committee level. So that was that piece of information that relates to our community. And other than that, that's all my report for this evening. Thank you. And the next order of business, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 12, reports from staff. We have the first report is from the planning consultant. This is regarding the start for a development variance permit and a development permit review process for 511 Lillooet Avenue.
Mr. Cossey? Is Mr. Cossey on for us this evening?
Can you hear me now?
A little bit louder, please, Ken.
Alrighty, how's that?
That's it. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Good evening. The site is approximately 4,300 square meters in size, 0.43 hectares or 1.0 acres. The parcel is zoned commercial 1 and is bounded by Lillooet Avenue to the south, Spruce Street to the east, and Randall Park to the north. The applicants, even though on the Google picture, you'll still see the bungalow motel and ice cream shop, the applicant has applied for and has received a demolition permit to remove these 2 buildings, and they're scheduled to be demolished in May. The applicant is proposing to build a mixed-use commercial and apartment building, which are permitted uses for the zone. The commercial space to be provided will be approximately 11,239 square feet, and the proposed building will consist of 6 stories and 124 dwelling units. The dwelling units will consist of a mixture of market condominium units and short-term rentals. With respect to the development variance permit, the applicant wishes to vary the following C1 land use regulations as outlined in zoning bylaw 1115-2017. The first one they want to do is increase the floor area ratio from 1.5 to 1.75, increase the lot coverage from 75% to 83.8%, increase the maximum height from 15 meters to 22.8 meters, reduce the accessibility parking stalls from 10 down to 4, reduce the overall parking requirements from 155 down to 136, and waive all the commercial parking requirements and enter into a cash in lieu arrangement. And you can do that through the zoning bylaw. There's a fee that's associated with it. And that fee in 2017 was $15,000 per parking spot that they wish to give up or not supply. And it's adjusted with the, consumer price index. And at this particular point in time, it's gone up approximately 8%. So that will bring the, if council wishes to proceed, it'll bring the cash in lieu arrangements up to $16,185 per waived parking stall. In addition, the above site is also located within the Lakeshore development permit area. The requirements for this development permit area number 1 are outlined within section 4.4 of the village's official community plan. And this area has been set up as a development permit area to address form and character issues associated with commercial and multifamily residential developments. And the recommendation is that staff be authorized to start work on applications 3090-20-DVP01/21 and 306020-DP01/21 for land legally described as Lot A, Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Plan, EPP 108940.
Thank you, Mr. Cossey. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Vidal, second by Councillor Piper. Before I get into the question period, we'll realize that this is just to start the process on this application. It is not a pre-approval for anything. And that and then Mr. Cossey will be back to us at some point to get into the nuts and bolts of this. So it's just to start the process. So are there any questions from council? Councillor Hooper.
Yes, good evening all. I know it's just to start the process, but when it comes back to council, if we agree it, can we? I'd like to put a motion on the table that in future any drawings come to us have a plan, side, front, and rear elevation on the scale that we're able to read without using a magnifying glass or a microscope, and that measurements imperial and metric are not mixed together. We've had some problems in the past with these, and I feel that some of my colleagues struggle with the understanding some of the drawings. So if we could do this, I think it would make life a lot easier for everybody on council. All the developer will have to do is to provide council with 5 sets of drawings that we can actually read and understand. And also it should have the associated height of other buildings in that area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. We have a comment from the administrator, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Hooper. Certainly, we agree as staff that this process doesn't meet the needs of council. We discussed this at an earlier meeting, seeking council's support to change our process of presenting applications at the council table. At that time, the decision was made to refer the matter to a future committee of the whole that would happen hopefully sometime in May. And that might be a good time to get into the details of council's expectations with respect to information packages, if I might make that suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Again, reiterating what you had said, Your Worship, this is simply by way of an early warning for us so that we know that there's something coming forward, and I think that's helpful. And at the same time, it's to authorize our staff to incur the effort and costs potentially to work with the developer. So I'm certainly supportive of this application to simply approve not any part of the application, but to approve us working with the developer. I do note, while we're at it though, and I have an open mind, I do note there are several significant variances being requested. So I certainly would want to see a good reason for that when I see the presentation. Just going to the issue of the cash in lieu of parking, and I'm not pretending for a second that can be adjusted at this moment. But when I look at that formula, what might have been a reasonable amount of money 10 years ago is not a reasonable amount of money right now. If 10 years ago or 7 or 8 years ago, you were contributing cash in lieu of $15,000, if you were not providing 20 spots, for instance, the village getting the $300,000 could buy 1 or 2 building lots and actually create parking. With the value of lots now, $15,000 is it doesn't really buy much. So it may well be, and I'm not talking about this proposal per se, but that might be an amount that needs to be readjusted. It's a very cheap way of buying out buying out necessary parking spots, particularly when we don't have a lot of excess parking spots, particularly along Esplanade. So I'm going to support that that we have our consultant work with seeing their proposal and work with them, and then we'll have the opportunity to make appropriate judgment when we have that information. But I just thought I would mention that there's a couple issues with parking particularly that concern me, and there are some really significant variations that they're requesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments from Council?
Your worship.
Councillor Vidal?
Your worship, I think Mr. Cossey wanted to make a further comment. Is that?
Cossey?
Yes, if I may, Councillor Hooper, in response to Councillor Hooper's request, inside of our development procedures bylaw, we have a requirement that they have to draw a map at a scale of 1 to 2,000. Or if we wanted it, we can ask for it to be at a scale of 1 to 5,000. What you're receiving in the package here has been shrunk down from that scale down into the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Cossey.
Cossey.
Can I carry on?
Pass?
I mean, 1 to 2,000 is quite a small scale, even unless it's an enormously large building. So, I mean, I'm trying to make head or tail of what I've received here today, and I struggle. I mean, all we've got from them is the proposed layout of the building. There is no drawings or associated height of the building. We do know they want a variance on it, but we don't know what the height of the buildings are around it. And to be quite honest, I've complained from day one that the drawings that we get are absolutely sort of ridiculous.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that the staff are already suggested they will be looking into this at probably the next committee of the whole. Councillor Vidal, we got you interrupted there. Please carry on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do appreciate our CAO's comments on it, and do empathize with Councillor Hooper's comments. And I'm just wondering through to our corporate officer if a motion is in order to refer the process back to a potential committee of the whole meeting to be scheduled in May.
I think so, but I will ask the corporate officer. I don't think we need a motion for that, do we?
No, Your Worship, that motion was made at the committee of the whole. It would be that development procedure bylaw was referred to the next committee of the whole.
Okay, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Any further questions? I'll call the question now on the motion. All in favour? Who's opposed? Opposed? Sorry,
Mr.
Councillor. You hear me?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just want a point of clarification. Are we voting on Councillor Hooper's motion, or are we
No.
voting on the recommendation?
No, we're voting on the recommendation.
I'm in favor of the recommendation. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. So I'll call, so I think we had everybody, was that Councillor Hooper opposed?
Oh,
Or in favour?
Yes, Your Worship.
Opposed. Councillor Hooper was opposed. So the motion passes. Next order of business, please.
Yes, Your Worship. We'll move on to the next report from the planning consultant, and this is regarding a start to a development variance process for 470 and 480 Esplanade Avenue.
Mr. Cossey, you're still on.
Thank you, Your Worship. The two lots individually are approximately 1,000.75 square meters in size, 0.10 hectares, or 0.25 acres. The applicant has stated his intention to purchase and consolidate the lots. When combined, a single lot will be approximately 2,023.5 square meters, 0.2 hectares, or 0.5 acres in size. The parcels are zoned C1 and are surrounded by C1 uses on the east, and the lot on the west side is currently vacant. Across Littlewood Avenue, the sites are zoned R2. These sites are also within the Lakeshore Development Permit Area, and before any construction can take place, the applicant will be required to address the form and character policy requirements as laid out within the official community plan. The applicant is proposing to purchase the lots, consolidate them, and build a 5-story apartment building that includes an above-grade parkade, which is a permitted use for this zone. The applicant wishes to vary the following C1 land use regulations as outlined in zoning bylaw 1115/2017. Reduce the provision of disability parking stalls from 4 to 3, increase the floor area ratio from 1.5 to 1.85, increase the allowable lot coverage from 75% to 85%. And this request is required as the proposed design of the parkade will be an 85% coverage, and the balance of the 5 floors will be at a 40%. Reduce the rear setback from the required 7.5 meters as it is adjacent to a residential use to 3 meters for the parkade, and increase the building height from 1.5 meters to 21.5 meters. In keeping with the notification requirements defined as the adjacent lots within 30 meters from these sites, owners of the adjacent properties will receive written notification of the variance request, and any comments that were generated will be part of the final report submitted to council. We've looked at the notice on title, and there is one covenant on one of the lots located at 480 Esplanade. This covenant addresses both the floodplain issues and acts as a development variance permit. The DVP aspect of this covenant allows for the applicant to reduce the flood construction level from 14.55 meters down to 13.2, but is only applicable to one lot at this particular point in time. Staff have been in discussion with the applicant regarding consolidating the 2 lots into one before proceeding with the development application. From a planner's perspective, it would be prudent to assemble the land first. In this case, this includes seeking a consolidation of the 2 adjacent lots. This can be achieved outside of the village's approving officer as per section 101B of the Land Title Act. And please note that the same company owns both parcels, so the registrar may accept a reference plan or explanatory plan to create the new lots. Typically, a land assembly project is done when the need for a larger lot is required for the proposed development, as in this case. For example, one of the proposed apartment unit types, type D, will straddle 2 separate legal descriptions, as outlined on page 31 in your agenda package. You can see that the property line goes right down the apartment unit type D. So with that, your worship, we're recommending that application 3090-20-DVP03/21 for land legally described as Lot 7, Block 4, fractional Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Plan 251, and that application 3090-20-DVP-0421 for land legally described as Parcel 345, Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Reference Plan 65327, not to be processed until a land consolidation or boundary realignment has been completed.
Thank you, Mr. Cossie, and we have a recommendation. Boundary realignment has been completed. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hooper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any discussion on this? Councillor Palmer.
A question to Mr. Cossie. Is the applicant the owner of the property?
No, he's not.
So I take it that the applicant has a contractual right to buy the property and is doing their due diligence in terms of the development of the property before they remove their subjects. Is that your understanding of what's happening?
I haven't gotten into those details. All I'm looking at is just on the surface of what we've got in front of us. We don't normally get the sales notice or anything else like that, but I understand that there is a sale pending.
The only reason I asked the question is that if it's the owner of the property that needs to do the lot consolidation, and the applicant, of course, doesn't have control over doing the lot consolidation, so it might create some difficulties for this particular project. I understand the lot consolidation needs to be done, and I've done them. They're quite simple to do, but I'm just wondering, since the applicant is not the owner, whether that might create an obstacle. The proposal itself is interesting. Of course, again, some significant variations. We're looking at height that's 50% higher than allowable under the present zoning. But I do recognize that if we go back and say what the recommendation is, that in theory could be the end of this particular proposal, since the applicant will have to decide then whether he's going to buy the property without any input on their plans in order to do the consolidation, unless they can convince the owner to do the consolidation, which very possibly they won't be able to. So that's all I wanted to say.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Vital.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Cossey, I just make note in your report, Ken, that your expertise indicates that it would be prudent to assemble the land first before proceeding with the application process. Can you just explain to me why you feel that is the best way to go?
Sure. At this point in time, right now, you've got two separate lots. So we've got no way at this particular point in time to deem that on one lot, they're at a 75% or if they're at an 85%, because it's right in the middle. We've got part of the building on one lot, part of the building on another lot. So it's if council wants to proceed with it, we could end up issuing two separate development variance permits. And at the same time, they're still going to have to apply for another covenant or a development variance permit to waive the floodplain constructions. And because it's only on a lot or 480 Esplanade, and that same consideration is not on 470.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm quite in support of some form of development on these two lots, that they really have remained vacant for considerable time. I do agree with both Mr. Cossey's and staff's recommendation. Moving ahead with an application for a development variance permit, I think prior to consolidation of the lots really has the potential for some further complications down the road. So I am in support of this recommendation and would encourage the applicant to continue to work with staff and Mr. Cossey to possibly expedite the process for this land consolidation. And I do very much look forward to the applicant's resubmission to council in the future. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that with all due respects to the applicant and Mr. Cossey, it's not our job to get involved into the sales pitch or the other portions here, which could become legal opinions moving forward. So I think what Mr. Cossey has written down here is just that at the moment, till more information comes forward from the proponent, that we cannot move forward with this. It's a little bit locked. And Councillor Palmer, you had a comment?
Well, I just wanted to stay on that topic just for a second. So, Mr. Cossey, are you saying that it's not possible for the village to proceed with processing some kind of an application of this sort with simply putting a condition of lot consolidation into the PLA when the matter proceeds?
When you do that, then when you do the lot consolidation, you get a new legal. So then you have to go through the process again, because you've already given council's already given their approval for lot A and B as a separate issue. And now when you've You bring it back and you've consolidated, it becomes a new legal description. So the permit you would have to reissue.
All right.
And Ms. McDonald, the CAO, has a comment?
Yes, although I believe that technically the erasure of an internal lot line or a consolidation is technically a subdivision, it's not one, as Ken pointed out, that involves the approving officer or the village's authority. So there would be no PLA issued.
Thank you. Good, Councillor Palmer.
I was referring to the PLA for the project, not for the consolidation. It's true, the owner can do a consolidation anytime he wants, he or she wants, without the village's approval. But I meant for the application itself. That's what I meant, is just making it a term, just like we would make a term that a covenant has to be filed. But it's fine. I've got the answer that Mr. Kosi has given me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before I call the question on the recommendation? All in favor? Opposed, anybody? All in favor, thank you. Next order of business, please.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 13 on bylaws, and we have a report from the financial officer. This is regarding the tax rate bylaw number 1162/2021.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. On an annual basis, council must establish tax rates to be applied to all properties in the village of Harrison Hot Springs to levy funds for municipal, regional district and regional hospital district purposes. The 2021 budget has determined that the amount required to be raised from property taxes for municipal purposes is $2,425,128. The proposed residential rate for Class 1 for 2021 is $2.54019 per $1,000 of assessed value, and the rate for the other classes of properties is established as a multiplier of the residential Class 1 rate. As per council motion at the February 1st, 2021 regular council meeting, the tax rate multiplier for Class 6 business was increased from 3.00 to 3.18, and Class 8 recreation nonprofit from 3.5 to 4.17. For municipal purposes, the village has 3 rate classes of property with assessed value. The proposed allocation between these assessment classes for 2021 is as follows. Residential, Class 1, $1,593,465 or 65.7%. Class 6, $702,830 at 29%. And recreation nonprofit Class 8, $128,833 at 5.3%. Schedule 1 attached outlines the tax rates for 2021 for general municipal purposes. Regional district and hospital district rates are determined by the Fraser Valley Regional District, and the taxes are collected by the municipality on their behalf. Schedule 2 outlines the rates levied for regional district and regional hospital district services per $1,000 of assessed taxable property value. The recommendation is that tax rate bylaw 1162/2021 be given first, second, and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. So we have a recommendation for first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Piper, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, thank you. We say this is a tax rate, but this doesn't set our taxes for this year, does it? For the residential.
Jones.
Yes, this rate, what you're approving tonight is the bylaw that sets the tax rate for the property classes within the village of Harrison Hot Springs.
So what would be the increase for the residents' taxes this year? Percentage-wise?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information with me. That information was provided at the February 1st council meeting with the proposals that were 3 option proposals that were presented that night.
And going through, I mean, on page, so look, page number 2 of 6, we've got animal waste control, and I take it that's what we spent this year, nearly $5,000.
Jones.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what Councillor Hooper's referring to. I don't have that document in front of me.
It's the document that was sent with the agenda. It's page 2 of 6.
We don't have page 206.
Well, someone's give it to me in my agenda package.
Oh, sorry, I think, yes, sorry, Councillor Hooper. That's not part of the agenda package. That was a separate report that was forwarded to councillors, but a different report than is on the agenda.
Thank you. Then no further questions.
Thank you. Any further questions from council? No. So I'll call the question. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Is that opposed, Councillor Hooper?
Yes.
Opposed by Councillor Hooper. Motion passes. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Yes,
Excuse me,
thank you.
Mayor?
And Councillor Piper is, I believe, going to declare a conflict of interest.
Yes, thank you. It's always awkward to interrupt, so I apologize. I'm going to move perceived conflict of interest for myself for the next matter on the agenda, as I've just begun discussions regarding a potential property acquisition within Angus Estates area. So I'm wondering if staff could move me into a waiting room.
Michelle? Yes, you can move the councillor to a waiting room. You're gone. We okay? Yeah, thank you. So,
Thank you.
oh, who's doing this one?
Yes, Your Worship, I'll move on to the next report then. This is also from the planning consultant. This is regarding a rezoning amendment bylaw 1163/2021 and public hearing comments for 835 Angus Place.
Mr. Cossey?
Thank you, Your Worship. The site is currently developed with one dwelling unit and a small workshop located in the backyard and is approximately 933 square meters in size. It is fully serviced and is accessible from Angus Place. The requested rezoning amendment is to change the current zoning from an R1 zone, residential 1, to an R2 zone. The request is to facilitate the redevelopment of the workshop to a coach house. Coach houses are allowed in R2 zones only as per section 4.10 of the village's zoning bylaw. The combined gross floor area of a coach house and all accessory buildings or structures in the lot must not exceed 90 square meters as per section 4.10 of the zoning bylaw. The site is currently designated as low density residential. And because of that, no OCP amendment was required, as the proposed R2 use is compatible with the current low density residential policies. In addition to this, staff is of the opinion that the proposed use is also compatible with section 6.3.3 of the village's OCP, and this section addresses affordable rental and special needs housing. With respect to sewer and water line, if the proposed bylaw goes forward, the coach house will be required to have a separate community and sewer water line hooked up, and the applicant will be responsible for the installation of the new lines. With the proposed zoning change from R1 to R2, the number of potential dwelling units will change from 1 dwelling unit to a high of 3 dwelling units. And traffic and on-site parking concerns, assuming an average of 1.5 to 2.4 vehicles per proposed dwelling, the development could potentially contribute an additional 3 new vehicles into the village's transportation network. The comments received at the public hearing can be categorized as a concern for the value of property in the neighborhood. The property value concern should not be used as a reason to not proceed with a rezoning application, though. And during the required public hearing notice timeframe, the village received 17 written submissions. The breakdown was 15 against the proposed rezoning and 2 who supported the rezoning. Upon a review of the written comments submitted, the 2 land use issues raised included traffic concerns and the neighborhood character. With that, Your Worship, staff recommendation is that council not proceed with any further readings of bylaw 1163/2021.
Thank you, Mr. Cossie. And we have a recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Hooper, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion. Councillor Palmer.
So I just, first off, I wanted to refer to the public hearing. We had our public hearing 2 weeks ago, and I understand that there was some disappointment on some participants that they weren't able to be heard for whatever technical reasons that they may have had. And I regret that. I was actually hoping to hear from everyone because I really was very interested in knowing opinions and also where people who had opinions lived with regard to the property. Of course, in a public hearing, I understand that everyone's opinion from the village matters, although I was particularly focused on the opinions of those who live in Angus Estates who would have a more immediate impact from any decision. I've driven there, looked around, and I've tried to be very open and give it due consideration, because I know when we make these decisions, we're affecting the landowner's plans and we're affecting the neighbor's plans. So these are not decisions to take lightly. When I go through the letters from the public hearing, which is of course the purpose of the public hearing, there are about, as you said, 14, as Mr. Cossie said, 14 opposed. In Angus Estates, and I can't really be sure where people live, although I tried to figure it out. There were, I think, 3 letters from Angus Estates. One letter was simply in support. They were without question in support of it. One indicated support but concern about parking. And then the third letter was opposed to it in terms of the people who would be neighbors who would be affected. I did notice when I drove around Angus Estate, it's pretty tight, and there is obviously a parking issue. So I can see the concern of the resident who raised that issue. When we've discussed this before in previous readings, we've all expressed some concerns. And I've kind of gone back and forth on it in my own mind in terms of what is fair. I think I wanted, before I indicated my position, I wanted to at least make sure that, I have looked through this, and I do think that the opposition is fairly strong, particularly the concerns raised in Angus Estate. So I'm going to vote for the motion, which is basically that we not proceed with this. Again, if we proceed, the R2 also could allow for the development of a duplex at some point. I'm wondering if there is some way that this could have been done without rezoning, perhaps with some form of a covenant. I know land use contracts are no longer going to be applicable, but if there was some other way of doing it, I'm not sure that I'd support that. But the actual rezoning of it does seem to fly in the face of the community plan in terms of my view, and does kind of smack of some spot zoning. And I don't see unanimous support in the neighborhood to justify that. So unfortunately, I'm not able to support the applicant's desire to proceed to this rezoning. Thank you.
I would think, Councillor Palmer, that to change from R1 to R2 would require rezoning rezoning document in that regards, and I think this will probably be a good discussion at the coming up of the official community plan. And now we have Councillor Vidal and Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although I'm quite empathetic to the applicant's situation, I have stated previously when this has come to council that I'm not in favor of spot zoning, especially in R1 zoned low density residential area. And I also have read the comments and submissions from residents, and the majority of them also indicate an unfavorable view of the application. So I am in favor of the recommendation, but I think this particular situation does raise a larger concern, and that is the need for more affordable housing in our community. And I agree with you, Your Worship, that the revision of our OCP is the best way to address the increasing need for affordable housing. And I really look forward to our residents' input to find really some creative and innovative ideas and solutions to address these housing concerns, but more on a broader scope within the whole village. So having said that, Your Worship, I do need to support the recommendation from staff and from Mr. Cossey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, thank you. Being the only council that voted on the first and second readings against this application and against all other applications for developments in R1 zones, and we've known the consequences of some of these, I think the amount of response we got was people trying to protect their own R1 zones. There is no way that people that have bought into an R1 zone should suddenly find themselves surrounded by duplexes, large workshops, and condos and the rest of it as virtually as such. So therefore, I support the recommendation that that we don't proceed with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll call no more questions. I'll call the question now on the recommendation that not to proceed any further with the reading of bylaw 1163. All in favour? Nobody opposed. Motion's passed. Thank you. Next order of business, please. Oh,
Yes.
call back Councillor Piper.
Councillor Piper, can you hear us?
I hear you guys now. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. And the next order of business, please.
Thank you. Yes, we'll move on to number 14, questions from the public, and this is pertaining to agenda items only.
Are there any questions this evening pertaining to the agenda from the public? Thank you.
Anyone who wishes to ask a question should now use the raise hand feature. There are no questions.
Being no questions.
Sure. I see a hand up on Adam Lewis.
Pardon?
I see a hand up for Adam Lewis.
Michelle?
I don't see that, but I can unmute him.
It's not showing up on our computer.
Sorry about that, guys. My fault. I think I might have hit something accidentally.
Okay.
Okay, you're on, Adam.
No questions, Your Worship.
There's no questions. You did it by mistake, Councillor Palmer.
Okay.
To adjourn the meeting. All in favour?
I would require a mover and a second.
I want to move it.
Oh, sorry, moved by Councillor Palmer, of course. Councillor
Yes.
Piper.
My sole
Everybody's
purpose.
Everybody's in favor. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Meeting.
night.
Everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank you
safe.
for your input. Thank you, Mr.